Hi, I'm Bretton.
I'm Dan.
We're from localmovers.com, and today we're going to talk to you about trucks.
Yeah, I think when it comes to your vehicle, it's a key part of your business. I've managed fleets of over 100 vehicles before. This is a key asset to your business and your scaling. So early days, don't invest in a truck. It's going to become more of a headache. But as you scale, you got a crew, you're going to want to do this. It's going to basically get to a place where it's going to cost you more to rent than to buy a truck. At that time, you're really going to need to decide, do you fix your own car today? Can you change the tires? Can you change the oil? Can you do some of the basic maintenance? Because as an entrepreneur, you're going to want to do some of those things if you're getting the vehicle serviced. But if you don't know anything about vehicles, my recommendation would be to go with some sort of leasing program, lease a vehicle. You're going to get a fairly new vehicle as you start your business. Early days, I think you could probably pick up a truck used for 10K. And if you know how to work on it yourself, then that's a great way to save money. And, you're going to spend some time in the evenings working on the truck. But what you really want to make sure with these vehicles, just like your kit and any equipment that you're using for moving, you don't want it breaking down the day of, right? Like you don't want to be able to go out to a move and it's like, oh man, starter's not working on the truck. Like that's going to set the crew. It's going to create a lot of dysfunction in the operation. So um, definitely as you scale, I think leasing companies are a good idea. Being able to go and procure. Some people want to own the assets. They want to buy the vehicles new. You can. That's also another way to do it. Buy a brand new vehicle, bring it in. You're not leasing it. You're not paying a payment. If you have a lot of cash, you can put that cash to work. And I think there's nothing wrong with buying a 10K truck and just putting it to work on the first truck. But as you scale to like the next 10 trucks, you're not going to, you might be able to get some of those used, but definitely when you go to like 100 trucks, you're going to have to start buying new trucks because there's not that many in the used market that fit the criteria. And you want to kind of outfit those trucks probably all the same. You want to, maybe keep them so that all the tires are the same and you can kind of combine parts.
You can put your website on there and your phone number on there. It's a great opportunity to market yourself, but there is a real cost of ownership that you have to think about when you're thinking about the cost of that rental truck, how you break that down and factor that into doing your basic accounting on your profitability on your jobs. Your real big expense basically is the fuel.
Your cost per mile too, like if you're renting it from Budget or U-Haul, they're gonna charge you per mile that you're operating
Yep.
for maintenance. And so that's another factor. So rentals work great in short hauls. The longer ones, that's really where buying and having your own truck is going to make a big difference.
Absolutely. And so it's really important when you're thinking about pricing a long distance move, not a local move, then you have to take into account the price per mile of the truck and the amount of fuel that you're going to consume on the truck and be conservative with what your estimate for the fuel usage is. And of course, fuel usage on the truck is even going to vary seasonally. If your guys are sitting in the truck for an hour waiting outside a job because the client's not there yet and it's summertime and they're running the engine to keep the AC cranking, you're just burning gas for an hour there. So there's a lot of different things you got to take into account, keep track of, and this is where just keeping a logbook and keeping track of this really matters. And of course, no two trucks are exactly alike, so the consumption there is important. And these local moves, this is a great thing about doing local moves, being a local mover. It's less of an impact, right? You're not going as many miles, you're not using as much gas, you're not looking at as many expense per mile.
There's like a trade-off there too. With a rental, you're not going to have to. So say you don't have a lot of jobs that week, you're not paying insurance, you're not paying the payment on the vehicle. And so that's where if you aren't booked out, if you're still kind of in the part-time phase where you're doing it 3 days a week, that's really where having the rental is going to be kind of a big unlock to where you're not bearing the cost of underutilization of that vehicle. You want to make sure too that maybe you're getting a little bit of deposit because you're gonna have to go and rent this vehicle before you go and do the job. And so the worst thing would be on a Saturday, you get a truck rented for Budget, you head over to the customer's site or you get a call the night before you get it rented, everything's good. And then you get there and they're like, yeah, we don't want to go with you anymore. They kind of cancel last minute after you've already got the vehicle rented and deposit put down. So that's where deposits come into with a truck.
I think it's very reasonable to ask a customer to, hey, put down a deposit so at least I don't lose my money on the truck in case you back out on me last minute. So let's go a little bit more into the math about this because you've operated fleets of many vehicles, hundreds of vehicles, and you've done different kind of financial options around owning and operating those vehicles. But let's talk about the real cost of ownership. A lot of guys think, okay, great. I'm looking at my accounting here and I did 10 moves and I paid $300 per move, let's just say, and I'm $3,000 out. And I'm looking online and I see I can buy this truck and I can finance it with my personal credit. And I'm going to get this whole truck for $2,500 a month or something, $2,000 a month. And you're like, yeah, I'm definitely coming out ahead. I'm saving $1,000 a month. What's kind of the trap there? What do you think people also need to factor into that equation to make sure they're doing their math right?
Yeah, I mean, like in the fleet game, it's all about total cost of ownership. You want to make sure that You think these things through and you look at the resale value of these vehicles, how they're selling on the resale markets, and just look at stuff before you get into it. Just because there's all kinds of different hidden costs in these things, and definitely when you go to the dealership and they're selling you a truck, they're not showing you all this stuff, but
Yep.
they're definitely getting paid. The first year payments probably is going toward the dealership for just the financing. These automotive companies actually make most of their money in financing of
Yep.
vehicles.
Yep.
So it's a good give and take though, right? Because getting a new vehicle, getting it financed, it's got a warranty, bumper to bumper. If it's got
Right.
an issue, you can take it back. A
No
lot of
maintenance cost there.
no maintenance. If it's new, you expect that it doesn't have issues. That's another thing too. Do you want to be, maybe you've got to turn over 10, 20 trucks a year when you get up to maybe 100 truck fleet. You come to year 3 and everything's leased. You got to move stuff out. How hard is that going to be able? That could become a full-time job for you, just trying to resell all these vehicles at auction.
Yep.
So you want to be kind of thinking about that. The leasing companies deal with that and help you with that. But again, it's a cost, and you want to measure that cost. When you're going with a leasing company, it may feel super easy, but you're paying somebody there. And so you want to understand,
Yep.
like, is this something I can do, something my team can do in-house? Does it make sense? And interest rates are kind of the biggest factor on that. When the interest rates are low, I think it makes sense to go with the lease. The time value money, you're not going to get the return very good anyway if you put it into something.
Yep.
But when these rates get high, the payments get very high. And so you're going to end up paying for it. It's always kind of an adjustment. You got to work with your accountant and just what your threshold is for what you want to take
Yep.
on.
Whether or not you're going to work on the truck, deciding to buy a much cheaper used vehicle versus getting a new one and leasing it. But just to break it down even more basic level, the two big things that we got to think about in terms of the cost structure here, aside from your payment on the truck, whether you financed, and you can certainly finance a used vehicle as well. Obviously, the rate's going to be higher, but the base price much lower, so your payment's going to be lower. But you got the cost of maintenance in the truck, the basic stuff, oil change, whatever. But you need to set aside money for when things do break down and wear out on that vehicle. And so you're looking at, hundreds of dollars, if not $1,000 a month on all these maintenance baked in over a year on the truck. And then, of course, you got insurance on the truck. And if you own the truck and you got someone driving it, there's any kind of incident, your insurance is going to get jacked up. If you're on a 6-month plan, then they're going to bump it up on the next one. So there are a lot of benefits to renting. And we kind of feel like, for me, the break even number that I'm thinking is if you're doing fewer than maybe 20 moves a month, and so you're not sure that in your slow month, let's say your 10 move month or something, where you're only getting like 15K coming in the door, at that point, it makes a lot less sense to own the truck. So for me, it's like maybe more towards 20 moves a month so that even in the slowest months you can cover it. But it's very important you think about your time and your energy. As Dan said, every evening or afternoon you're spending burning yourself out working on your truck. You could have been out there pounding the pavement, getting more customers, doing more business development. And if you have that skill, we would say lean into that skill. The value of a mechanic is much lower in this type of business than the value of a guy who can win deals, bring in new business, develop the brand. Then that's a different type of thing to think about. So I think, there's one other thing I want to talk about a little bit because you were mentioning some of your own operations with trucks recently in terms of cost. And that's the delta, just putting some numbers around it, between when you're using the truck locally and doing local moves and when you're doing interstate or longer haul move if you're loading up your own truck.
Yeah, like a 3-day long haul move could be, even if for a small truck, could be 250 miles. You might pay a U-Haul or budget 600 for that. Where you might be able to find the same truck, Home Depot. I've got some special for $20 a day, and if you're not going very many miles, it will pencil out for you and it won't cost you that much money. So you got to be kind of thinking about these things, especially when you're talking to the customer, getting the deposits together, and just developing your own pricing. That these things can start to add up, especially if like a lot of the moves that you're doing, if they're just all around town, okay, then maybe renting is the right way to do it. If they're longer and the cost per mile is starting to really run the rates up, then you might want to start thinking about getting a truck. There are things that you have to have, like you're going to potentially have to personally guarantee the truck. Early stage business is not going to have the credit facility that it needs. So oftentimes they'll lean on the owner, and they're going to lean on your own personal credit score. They're going to want potentially somebody to be a guarantor of that vehicle. So that's important to remember, because you might be personally guaranteeing these vehicles. So even if the business fails, you're on the hook for that note for that truck.
Yep.
If you have bad credit, you might not even be able to get a very good rate in terms of interest rate or even get a vehicle. It might take a while. So these are things to start early. Maybe you want to buy vehicles, but just to build your business credit, I think it's a good idea to lease the first vehicle or put it on a loan, just to start to build and get that credit facility together. And then the other thing is, like, when you have the capital, say you've been saving for a few years now, 2, 3 years. You've got $25,000 in the bank. One of the questions in an early stage business is, do I want to plow all 25 into that truck? You're putting all your eggs in one basket
Right.
with that
You could be
asset.
spending that money on Google ads and maybe
Totally.
getting a lot of customers
Growing the
from that and
business.
printing
Yeah.
money out of
And
that.
it might get in a wreck. Then you got the truck tied up, this asset's tied up.
Yep.
The insurance is going to pay out for it, but maybe you're not going to get all 25K because the truck's been used a bit or it's depreciated.
Yep.
So you just need to be, I think in the beginning, you want to rent the trucks and then maybe get into like a loan to own or lease just at the beginning to build that credit, build that rapport, and not put all your eggs in that basket. As you get bigger, it might make more sense just to buy the trucks outright.
Yeah. I mean, I think the main thing to remember here is that a truck is fundamentally a cost center. It's not a profit center. So every dollar that you put into that truck that you could be using to buy ads to generate more revenue for your business, hire more guys, do more recruiting, all kinds of things to grow your business are lost in that vehicle. So it's really about, even if you're saving like a couple $1,000 a month to buy the own truck, that may not be the best business decision for you because you might be able to grow your business substantially more than that by using the money that you'd have tied up in the truck to do other things. And I'd say one more thing, which is, a lot of guys think, okay, I got to get this big truck. I think what's 26 foot is the cutoff for CDL.
Yep.
So like maybe you don't have the CDL yet, you get 26. Maybe you're thinking an even bigger truck. You have the CDL license, commercial driver's license, if you're not familiar, and you have that, and you're thinking, oh, I want this $100,000 truck. I'm going to finance it. And then you think, okay, I'm thinking about this big truck or nothing because I want to be able to do all the jobs from one truck. But you also need to think incrementally. If a lot of your jobs won't need that big vehicle, if you're just getting started out, there's no reason you can't get like a $5,000 used Ford Ranger and use that to move some small gigs. You can get a medium-sized Sprinter van for 15K and still be renting the bigger trucks. So you don't need to have a one size fits all. Think about your personal vehicle becoming part of the fleet and thinking to be creative about how to use assets. I mean, if you're really scrappy, you're getting started, you got nothing. Maybe you make friends with some guys who have trucks. This is part of being an entrepreneur, is really figuring out the landscape that you operate in, whether you're in a small town or a big city, and getting to know all the other players and wheeling and dealing and networking and sorting things out so that you can work together.
To add to that point, I think one thing with the truck and being a cost center, you can also bring it in and it could be a marketing asset. So that's an incentive to have the truck
Yeah,
either
you might win
owned
customers
or
from that truck.
leased, especially if you can get a good design. It's worth paying in terms of marketing dollars. It's again one of these channels people are going to see. It is like almost like a billboard. So if you get a good design, it looks pretty, stands out. It's got all your colors and logos, and then maybe you don't. We have a job on Sunday. Instead of parking that in your yard, you can go park that on a main drag or something like that. It's a free advertising, free billboard for your
Totally.
company.
But, all that aside, as we're thinking, catering to the early stage first 6 months guy getting his business started, what would you say the top 3 things that he needs to learn as he's going about just operating trucks in general, whether or not he's buying one, considering buying one and renting them?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that you're going to be able to learn just renting is like what brand do you like? What type of truck do you like? There's Fords, there's different models that come from U-Haul or Penske, whatever you're going to rent. And so you kind of get a feel and you can kind of test and learn about like what type of trucks. Maybe you like them all. I don't know. But you get a sense of what works for you, what doesn't. Maybe that's your go-to truck every time. Maybe you want a lift gate in the back. So you can kind of test and learn these things and build these into your standard operating procedures with your co-founder about, okay, when we go out to find a truck, like what do we like? So use those early days as you're renting vehicles and testing to just say, okay, we're not going, like this doesn't work for us. Like maybe you get a U-Haul, the smaller one, it doesn't have one of the bridge gates that comes out. That's not great because you can't run a dolly up it, slows your operation down. You can only, load from the tailgate. Those are the types of things I think as you work your methodologies, what vehicles work best for you, which ones don't, what trucks do you like to drive? Because at the end of the day, you're going to be owning the asset and you're going to be spending some time in it. I think that's really important. And then in the early days, in that first 6 months, don't hesitate to be scrappy, right? Maybe you don't have a truck, but you can get a cheap trailer. You've got a truck that doesn't have a huge bed. You can get a trailer that helps you pull stuff. There's a lot of creative ways that you can do this. Yeah, those are the things that I would think about. Be scrappy. Maybe businesses are going out of business. Gov Planet is a Iron Planet. They do government auctions every week. So we've sold vehicles on there. We see tons of vehicles on there. That's a little bit more risky. It's a whole nother thing. So if you're not, you don't have any expertise in that, I would be very, very cautious in terms of you don't want to get a vehicle that's got like problems. It's going to be a total distraction for your business. Because at the end of the day, you're running a moving company. You're not managing the fleet. Like the fleet really should be something that just works. And just like the tools and kit that you buy should be orderly and something that you can rely on day in and day out as you're running your business. You don't want it to become a distraction.
Yeah. That's a pretty good summary. I think the one thing I'd add on closing, which we discussed earlier, is, it's really important from the very beginning with these trucks that you understand, even if you're renting, what your total cost is, so you can start building a good mental model around that and understand what the cost structure is, because a truck is one of your big costs, whether you're doing short distances or long distances. So I think that about sums it up for us on trucks and vehicles. And let's get moving.